on to item 7. And we have a discussion and information.
While Mike is setting up here, if I could do a brief introduction.
Oh, okay.
A couple of months ago, the board instructed and contracted with Bowen Collins to take a look at the rates and come back with a recommendation. Since I've been here over the last 4 weeks, I've been going through our numbers and looking at the stuff that Mike has put together, and staff and I have sat down and had a chance to take a look at what our needs are going to be over the next 6 years, which the board has not had a chance to see yet, because I just finished finalizing that document this afternoon. And what I'd like to propose is, and Mike's is a part of it, but I think this issue that we're going to have regarding rates is going to take several months for us to get through. And I believe there's going to be an awful lot of education, and it's going to be more of a lengthy process than I think the board originally hoped it was going to be. But I think in all fairness to the board and the citizens, that it's just going to take a lot longer than I had hoped, and I think anybody else has hoped on this thing, because we do have a really complex water system. We have some complex issues regarding litigation that ties into this, and past infrastructure issues that tie into this. So I just want you to not think that we're going to be finalizing this in the next week or two. This is going to be a several-month process, and we're going to have a lot of public input as we move forward on this, and we'll see where it goes from there. But with that, Mike has put together a presentation that outlines part of the piece of the puzzle that we're going to look at, and that kind of deals with our tiered rate structure. And I'll turn the time over to Mike for his presentation.
Mike Chandler's
Got the
Bowen
lights
and
out
Collins.
for you, okay.
I don't know, can you see that, Barbara, if you want? Yeah, it's probably a little more clear. There's a couple of tables that'll probably be more visible if the
We've
lights
been
are.
very involved with the Virgin Valley Water District since they started, and he did all of our arsenic treatment plants. And for your information, Mike, I did get some extra water from Lincoln County tonight. So
He's not even listening.
He's back there making up the documents.
You may be bargaining with your neighbor actually down the road. So this presentation is essentially a summary of the task that we were placed upon to review the rates. I've gone through and made a quick summary of 2010, just to kind of brush up on what happened last time we looked at these, and for new board members and any of the public who may not have been present at that time. So this is actually an extension of the effort by the Water District in 2010, and we'll get through that as we get into the slides. The primary study tasks for us to accomplish was to look at the current account data, the number of accounts, and current health of the district as far as it relates to growth, and look and revise any growth projections that needed that, review the usage patterns and examine the seasonal water trends, and also just kind of project revenue requirements, and then take a look at where we've come since 2010 and what if any adjustments are needed. So as a comparison, in 2010 we had roughly 7,750 accounts, and at that time we assumed an annual growth rate of 2.3%. And the previous fiscal year's water sales were 1.8 billion gallons, and we had projected that by 2014, 5 years from that point, we'd be at just under 2 billion gallons in water sales. In actuality, what's occurred since then, we've added just under 200 customers, 7,922 accounts. The actual growth, we've got two numbers I'm showing there. The first is based on actual usage. And so we've got 1.33% for the 2012 fiscal year and 0.66% for the 2013 fiscal year. The account growth is at 1.87 and 1.72 for the same periods. The discrepancy that you see there is due to the large number of second homes that we typically have. And so you'll naturally we see accounts growing quicker than we see usage because of that.
Mike, just to clarify, the little dash in front of those numbers in the right column, that's not a minus.
That is not a minus,
Thank you.
but that doesn't mean it's a good number either.
Okay.
Yeah, and with that, actually, you know, one thing that is a little bit concerning, as you see there, is the trend is down. Over the last 2 years, the trend is for decreasing growth, or de-accelerating, I shouldn't say. There is growth, but it's slowing. For the 2012, I mentioned the just under 1.8 billion gallons. We're essentially flat since 2009 on the water cells. Over the years, we've seen a couple little bumps and troughs through there, but we're essentially flat as far as water usage goes. The key assumptions that we made as we adopted the new rate structure in 2010 were that we'd follow what's the American Water Works Association cash needs based approach. We assumed that annual growth rate of 2.3%, and we didn't factor in any conservation in the 5-year plan. What the assumption was that the cash reserve would buffer any effect or any shortfall at that time, that anything that conservation would affect. We kept the existing rate structure as far as the tiers and the block structure, and had planned for no major capital improvements over that 5-year period. At that time, we were in the process of working with Marty and the Bond Council, also defeasing a large portion of the bond. That was carried out, and a rate hike of 36% was implemented. So since that time, as mentioned previously, the growth rate was overestimated. The rate hike of 36% resulted in a revenue increase of just over 27%. And what that results in is roughly 9% conservation. People have reduced their usage, so that the usage that we saw in 2010 has, even though we had a 36% rate hike, the revenue adjustment was actually only 27%.
And we expected that, right?
We expected some conservation, yes. That is the one sure thing you get with the rate hike is, of all the other methods of conservation, that takes care of it. In the interim, there was also a water master plan performed that identified several deficiencies, mainly just peak production capacity was the glaring one. And so some capital projects will likely be required before that 5-year window is eclipsed. At that time, we also identified deferred maintenance, or what we called a replacement account, something that could be accruing to replace a lot of the additional infrastructure as it ages over a period of time. Typically, with new growth, you like to have a mix of funding projects between bonding that is typically covered by the new growth, but also cash reserves that covers, or cash that covers the replacement of existing infrastructure serving existing customers.